This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Thank you so much for the warm introduction, Rabbi Tabak. It's the beginning of the 3 weeks, and foremost on our mind is the Galus and the Churban, and how we're going to get out of it. But before we figure out how we're going to get out of it, we have to figure out which Galus are we in? Where are we? You can't leave a place unless you know where you are. The concept of Daled Galios is a very fundamental concept in Judaism. The concept that there are 4 exiles is a very basic concept. It's so basic that it's already forecasted to the Jewish people. In the beginning of the Chumash in Parsha Bereshis, the pasuk says, "V'ha'aretz hoisa soihu, v'avoihu, v'choshech al pnei sahoim." And the Medrash tells us on your sheets, it's number 1 on the sheet, Reb Shimon ben Lakish, Pasar Karya B'Galios. Reish Lakish interprets the pasuk that it's talking about the 4 Galus. The Haaretz Hoisa Soihu, the word astonishingly, this refers to Bavel. Like the pasuk says in Yirmiyah about Bavel, V'hinei Soihu. Vavayhu, empty, refers to Madai. Like the pasuk says, Vayav Hilu Lahavias Haman. They hasten to bring Haman, who is part of Madai. Choshech refers to Yavan. As we know in reference to Chanukah, that the Greeks darkened our eyes with their decrees. And then Tahoim, the Medrash says, refers to the wicked Malchus, She'ein Lohem Cheker. It's a Malchus, it's a kingdom, it's an exile that has no end. It cannot be investigated. As long as it lasts, it seems even longer. It seems to be never ending. Interestingly, the Medrash does not identify what in fact is the 4th Galus. It just says, Mamleches Harasha, the 4th wicked Galus. I like to speak about this topic, Parshas Matos Maseh. There's an incredible remez. There's a remez in the Megala Amukos who brings down an allusion to the 4 Malchios in the first pasuk of Parshas Maseh. Pasuk says, Eila Maseh B'nei Yisrael. These are the encampments of the Jewish people. So literally, the 42 stops that they made in the Midbar. But we know that throughout history, the main stops we've made are the Daled Golusim. Says the Megala Amukos, Eila Maseh B'nei Yisrael. Let's take those 4 words. Eila, Aleph. Eila starts with an Aleph. Maseh starts with a Mem. B'nei starts with a Beis. Yisrael starts with a Yud. You know what the encampments, you know what the trips, you know what the travails of the Jewish people are? The 4 Golusim. Aleph, Edom. Maseh, Mem, Madai. Beis, Bavel. Yisrael, Yud, Yavan. The Daled Golusim are alluded to. Eila Maseh B'nei Yisrael. Edom, Madai, Bavel, Yavan. And the question is, why in that order? Why in that order? I don't know, if you've heard this Shiur, you might not have heard this part. Eila, why in this order? If anything, Edom would be the last Galus. Madai is the 2nd Galus. B'nei, Bavel is the 1st. Why in that order? But says the Megala Amukos further. What's the trup on the words Eila Maseh B'nei Yisrael? Eila Maseh B'nei Yisrael. Eila, Azla Geresh, B'nei Yisrael Munach Ravi. Azla Geresh Munach Ravi. Azla Geresh means we left, we were chased out. Munach, we were placed. Ravi in the 4 Golusim. So the trup and the Rashi Tevos, they work hand in hand. The 4 Golusim alluded to in the words Eila Maseh B'nei Yisrael fit into the trup. Azal, we left. Geresh, we were chased out. Munach, we were placed. Ravi. So what's the 4th Galus? What Galus are we in today? When I was a kid, living in America, what Galus are we in? Everybody knows. We're in Galus Edom. We're in the Roman Galus. The superpower of the world was the heirs of European culture, America, Edom, Esav. And then slowly we begin to hear, especially in the last couple of years, We're suffering Yishmael. We hear about Yishmael wherever you go around the world. Yishmaelim. I was a rabbi in New York and Queens, my first job, and it was in a vibrant, frum community. And across the street from the shul that where I was, all of a sudden there were different yeshivas who were vying to purchase the property. And then one day, all of a sudden we see people covered in black except for 2 little holes. And it's a new mosque in Queens. I spoke in London, in Edgware. They're building the largest mosque in the European continent. This is a more recent phenomenon. We definitely begin to feel the yadoi ba'kol v'yad kolbai. We begin to feel the power, the force, the proliferation of Yishmael. Is this part of the plan? Does this need to happen? Is this part of Gullus? What Gullus are they? Are they a Gullus? Where do they fit into the grand scheme of things? We would like to think, and our sages tell us, we're living in the period of Ikvasa de Mashiach, the heel of Mashiach, the heel of Mashiach. In other words, we could hear his footsteps. Nobody knows exactly when he's coming, but we know he's close. And we know there's a 4th Gullus. Is Yishmael the 4th Gullus? Is Edom the 4th Gullus? If Edom is, where does Yishmael come into play? The truth is, if you look at number 2, there's a pasuk in Tehillim. Now this is a very interesting pasuk, because this pasuk is the pasuk that we omit from Tachnon. We know Tachnon is Parak Vav of Tehillim, and we begin Parak Vav with pasuk Beis. We begin Hashem al bi'apcha soichicheni, but we omit the first pasuk. The first pasuk is Lam Natseach beneginois al hashminis mizmar leDavid, by the conductor on the 8th, a psalm to David. Lam Natseach beneginis al hashminis, on the 8th. We're singing about the 8th. What are the 8ths that we're singing about? Says the Medrash that the Daled Golios that we always talk about are really 4 which are 8. Even though we always say there are 4 Golosim, each Golos is a dual Golos. Says the Medrash, Edom hi hashminis. Edom is the last one. So what are the 4 that are 8? Says the Medrash, Bavel, Babylon, but Babylon comes with like the dual Gullus, with the counterpart. Bavel, Kazdoi, the Chaldeans. Madai, Paras. If you learn the Gemara Megillah, the Gemara Megillah says, how come sometimes in the Megillah it's Paras Madai, Madai Paras? So the Gemara says they had a deal among each other that whoever's the leader, the other one will be like second in command. But it was a dual Golas. Paras Umadai. Yavan, there's Greece. But we know ultimately, we know that Greece was just an offshoot of Maikdan, of Macedonia. Alexander the Great conquered the world. He was Malach Bekipa. But then his empire was divided among his 4 generals. So Yavan is an offshoot of Maikdan. Says the Medrash, Yishmael and Edom. Yishmael and Edom. So even though the 8th one is Edom, there's something called Golos Yishmael, there's something called Golos Edom. Says the Medrash, when God redeems us and gathers us from the corners of the world, we will sing praise to Him for gathering us from the 8 Golosim. And which is the final Golos? Which is the last Golos? The Medrash Shachar Tov says, the last Golos is Golos Edom. Interestingly, Rashi in Sefer Zechariah, Rashi says the same thing with a little bit of a twist. Rashi says ever so slightly differently. Rashi says, yes, there are 8 Golosim, but which is the last one? Take a look at number 4. Says Rashi, do you know what the 8 Golosim are? Dalid Malchiois Halalu Sheshibdu B'Yisrael Kfulois Hayu. They're double. Bavel, Kazdim, Madai, Paras, Antiochus, Moikdan, Edom, Yishmael. Interesting that Rashi flips the order. The Medrash says Yishmael, Edom. Rashi says Edom, Yishmael. Why does Rashi flip the order? Is it just a mistake? Is it an accident? Why did Rashi flip the language of the Medrash Shachar Tov? The Medrash Shachar Tov says Yishmael and Edom. Rashi says Edom v'Yishmael. Hang on to that. Put that in your back pocket. We're going to come back to that. Rashi says a slight nuance different than the Medrash Shachar Tov. Edom v'Yishmael. I have a question for you. Even though the Medrash Shachar Tov and Rashi all say that there are 4 Golosim, which are 8, but we all know that when you make the official list of the 4 Golosim, it's Babylon, it's Bavel, it's Paras Umadai, Persia, Media, it's Greece, it's Yavan, and it's Edom. We don't normally think of Yishmael as a Golos. Why not? Why isn't Yishmael typically thought of as a Golos? This is a very important question. They would seem to meet the bill. We would definitely think they're bad enough to be a Golos. They're certainly rotten enough. They're certainly cruel enough to be a Golos. Why are they not on the official who's who list of Golosim? So this is a question of the Maharal. It's a fundamental question that the Maharal deals with in a number of places. Why is Yishmael not officially called a Golos? So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to share with you one answer of the Maharal, a beautiful answer, a wonderful answer. However, the final answer I'm going to wait on. Okay, I'm going to tease you. I'm not going to give you the final answer of the Maharal immediately. If you look on your sheets, in number 8 and 9, the Maharal wants to know. We'll start with number 8. V'yesh b'nei adam shayalim. There are some people who ask, Heichon remez malchus Yishmael, shehu malchus rabasav tekifa. Where is a remez to malchus Yishmael, who's a powerful, very mighty empire? Why is there no Yishmael? You know, when you talk about ve'aretz hoisasoihu, vavoihu, v'choishech, al pnei sahaim, why is Yishmael not on the list? Why is there never an allusion to Golos Yishmael? So Maharal gives a fantastic answer. This is an answer that will explain many things, many ideas. And that is, what is the definition of a Golos? What is the definition of a Malchus? What's the definition of a Malchus? So let's explain. You know, we say in Kiddush Levana, we daven, we say, Uvikshu es Hashem Elokeim, they're going to seek out God, v'yas David Malkam, and they're going to seek out David HaMelech. That's what we hope for, that's what we're yearning for, that everyone in the world will seek out God and seek out King David. Can you imagine to say in the same sentence that we hope that everyone will seek out God and David? How could you say anything besides God? How could you say God and King David? Isn't God enough? Isn't that, once everybody seeks out God, haven't we fulfilled what we need to fulfill? Why do we add v'yas David Malkam? The answer is, there's a very fundamental concept in Judaism. And that is, God's reign and dominion in the world is not recognized until we have Malchus Beis David. Malchus Beis David is the venue, is the vehicle through which God is recognized in the world. God has a kisei hakavod. He has a throne. This throne stands on 4 legs. The 4 legs are Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov. But the 4th leg, the leg that holds up the kisei hakavod, the leg that gives a window into the majesty of God, is David HaMelech. Without Malchus Beis David, God is not recognized in this world. That's why David, who comes from Yehuda, first of all, the word David are 2 Daleds. The Dalet stands for the 4th regel of the Kisei HaKavod. But besides that, David comes from Yehuda. When Yehuda was born, the pasuk says about Leah, Vata'amoid miledes. Literally, she stopped giving birth. Yehuda was her last child for a while. However, says the Shla HaKadosh, Vata'amoid is a lashon of Amida. When Yehuda was born, God's Kisei HaKavod stood strong. It had Amida. It had stability. Without Yehuda, without David, can you imagine a 3-legged chair? Imagine a 3-legged chair when you're tired and you're sitting at a shiur, right? Yeah, maybe if you're really awake, you could keep yourself up. But a 3-legged chair cannot stay straight. Without David HaMelech, the Kisei HaKavod Kiviyachol has no stability. God's Malchus is only recognized in the world al Yedei David HaMelech. That means David's Malchus was a window into Malchus Shamayim. Says the Maharal, when Babylon came along, when Babel came along and destroyed the Beis HaMikdash, and they took Tzidkiyahu, and they tried to blind Tzidkiyahu, they usurped Malchus Shamayim and Malchus Yisrael, and they took it for themselves. And then when Madai came and they conquered Babel, they took the Malchus of Babel, who had the Malchus of David, which was Malchus Shamayim, and they took it to themselves. And then the Yevanim took it for them, and then Edom took it for themselves. So Edom has our Malchus. They hijacked, they co-opted Malchus Shamayim. That's why we find in the Gemara Megillah this seesaw relationship between Klal Yisrael and Edom, where the Gemara says in Megillah that anyone who says that Rome is built up and Yerushalayim is built up, do not believe them. Because you can't have two Malchios at the same time. It's one concept. Either we got it or they got it. So if someone says Rome is built up and we're destroyed, believe them. If someone says we're built up and they're destroyed, believe them. But if someone says we're both destroyed or both built up, sheker v'chazav, they're liars. So in order to be a Malchus, that means they took our Malchus. Edom took our Malchus. What about Yishmael? Yishmael doesn't meet the bill. Because Yishmael never took our Malchus. Yishmael has their own source of power. Yishmael has their own source of kayach. You know what Yishmael's source of power is? A tefillah that we regret until this day. A tefillah that we can't take. The tefillah of Avraham Avinu. Avraham Avinu says to God, Lu Yishmael yichya lefanecha. If only Yishmael could live in fear before you. When Avraham Avinu said those magical words, could Yishmael live before you? He imbued Yishmael with power for all time. Yishmael's kayach is not related to our kayach. We could be on top of the world, and so can they. They could be down, and so could we. We don't have this seesaw relationship with Yishmael. Because Yishmael never usurped our power. They have their own source of power. In fact, the Zohar HaKadosh says that when Avraham Avinu said, Lu Yishmael yichya lefanecha, and God said, okay, Yishmael shematicha, we turned to Avraham Avinu and we said, Avraham, you forsook us. Why'd you say that? We're not happy you said that. You know what kind of monster you created when you said the words, Lu Yishmael yichya lefanecha? You forsook us, Avraham Avinu. Says Maral, the reason why Yishmael is not one of the Malchios is because it doesn't meet the specific requirements of being a Malchus. The definition of Malchus is to take the Malchus of Klal Yisrael. That's the first answer, the Maral. A wonderful answer, a very important answer to know, but not the definitive answer in why Yishmael is not a Malchus. Now we're going to come back to a different Gemara. Because what I brought to your attention is that there are really four Malchios, which are 8. And the Medrash Shoicher Tov says Yishmael Edom, and Rashi says Edom Yishmael. Please take a look at a Gemara in Avodah Zarah, Daf Beis Amud Aleph, number 6 on your sheets. The Gemara says that at the end of days, God's going to take out the Sefer Torah, and He's going to say, whoever learned this, whoever supported this, come get your reward. And the Gemara says all the nations are going to clamor together. They're going to come be'erbuvia. They're going to say, we supported it, we defended it, we upheld it. And God says, single file, please, one at a time. And the Gemara says, so who's going to be first on the line? Rome. Why, says the Gemara? Because they're the most chashav, says the Gemara. Says the Gemara, what are they going to say to God? They're going to say, God, we supported the Torah. We made Times Square. We made Madison Square Garden. We made stores. We made bathhouses. We made everything. We printed money. Everything we did was so that the Jewish people should be able to learn Torah. And God's going to turn to them and say, you fool! That's not why you did it. You did it for yourselves. You made stores. You made bathhouses to put zaynos there. You made it to indulge yourself, to enjoy yourself. That's not why you did it. By the way, the Brisker Rav says, God doesn't say you're wrong. God doesn't say these are not for Klal Yisrael. Avada, they're for us. That's what they're for. The stores are all for us. The bathhouses are all for us. God just says you're a bunch of fools because that wasn't your intention. Meaning, if you want to know why Hashem allowed them to make all of this infrastructure, everything that happens in the world is for Klal Yisrael. You have to understand, every news report you hear, it's for Klal Yisrael. Everything that the Gemara says, even a boat that comes from one side of the world to the other, Migol Araspamya, is only successful because of Klal Yisrael. The stock doesn't go up even 1 decimal only because of Klal Yisrael. We say this every morning. Hu Hashem Elokeinu. He is our God. B'chol karenu elav. B'chol ha'aretz mishpatav. In all of the world are His judgments. Meaning, every judgment that He carries out is as our God. God doesn't do anything for any other purpose other than the Jewish people. So, the Gemara says, after Rome is sort of dismissed, they walk out depressed, they walk out crestfallen, and they leave the courtroom. Says the Gemara, Rome walks out. Who comes in after Rome? Paras, Persia. Why Persia, says the Gemara? Because they're the second most chashuv nation. Persia is so chashuv? What's so chashuv about Persia? Anyway, the Gemara says that they're going to come to God and they're going to say, God, we made many bridges, we conquered many cities, we made many wars. Everything we did is for the Jewish people. And God's going to say, you're a bunch of fools. You didn't do it for the Jewish people. You did it for yourself. You made bridges to collect taxes. You conquered cities to be able to capture people. So says the Gemara, Rome leaves depressed. Persia leaves depressed. And once they're not answered, nobody else has the audacity to ask God for any reward. And everybody drops the case. Okay? So listen carefully. The Gemara says that of all the nations of the world, there are two nations that come in front of God and say, we want reward. Rome and Persia. Why them? Says the Gemara, why only these two nations? So if you look in the last lines of the Gemara, Maishna hani dechashiv, my taima aili, says the Gemara, because they are the most chashuv of all the nations. Rome and Persia are the most important, the most distinguished, the most prestigious of all the nations. Says the Gemara, what exactly makes Rome and Persia the most prestigious of all the nations? The Gemara says something astounding. Hanoch mashchi b'malchusayu ad ha'asi Mashiach, because these are the only two nations that will last until Mashiach comes. What are the two nations that will last until Mashiach comes? Rome and Persia. Now, if you would like to think that today's Iran is Persia, then maybe you say, okay, I got the whole story. Rome is today America. Rome is, the heirs of the ancient European world, the Roman dynasty. That's the United States of America. And Iran, that's Persia. So, at the end of days, it's going to be World War III between Iran and the United States of America. First of all, Iran today has nothing to do with ancient Persia. The people who live there today were probably brought in from somewhere, some Oriental countries. There's no connection today between the people in Iran and the ancient Persian dynasty. But think about what the Gemara is saying. That there will only be two nations that last until the end of days. Rome and Paras. Paras. There's no remnant of Paras. There are no relics of Paras. If you want to see any remnant of Paras, you have to go to the British Museum, and you'll see a clay pottery that they found 1,000 years ago. That was the teacup that the Persian emperor would drink from. That's the only remnant of Paras. And yet the Gemara says the two most important nations in the world are Rome and Persia. What does Persia got to do with anything? Not only that, but there's another Gemara. Right? So if I were to ask you, at the end of days, in the boxing ring, right, in the world arena, who are going to be the last two men standing? Rome and Persia. And who's going to defeat who? Who's going to defeat who? Who's going to be the last man standing? So for this, there's another machla, another Gemara. You have to know this Gemara. The Gemara in Yuma, Daf Yodam and Aleph. Amar Rabbi Shiur ben Levi, Amar Rabbi, Asida roimi shatipo biad paras. Not only Rome and Persia are the last two nations standing, Persia will defeat Rome. So they're going to get into a boxing rink, and Persia is going to give, Rome an uppercut. Rome is going to be lying on the floor. Ding, ding, ding. The round has gone to Persia. That's what Rabbi holds. Rabbi holds the last man standing will be Paras. The Gemara continues, 5 lines down. Amar Rabbi Barachan Rabbi Yochanan. Asida roimi shatipo biad Paras. Rome will fall to Persia. Bottom line, Amar Rav, no. Asida Paras shatipo biad roimi. Persia will fall to Rome. So one thing is clear. At the end of days, there will only be two nations remaining. Only two dynasties, two empires remaining. Rome and Persia. And regarding who will defeat who, it's a machloikes tanoim. Rabbi says Persia. Rabbi Yochanan says Persia. Rav says Rome. What? I mean, is this Gemara accurate? The Gemara is saying at the end of days, Persia is going to be a world superpower? But we don't see that to be the case. The Persian Empire is long gone. Comes the Maharal literally revolutionizes world history with one point of information that really will change the way we look at modern events, current events, and Jewish history in general. The Maharal says, regarding that question, why Yishmael is not listed as one of the 4 exiles, let me tell you something, says the Maharal. I know I gave you an answer that Yishmael has a different source of power than the Jewish people. They don't usurp our power. Let me tell you what I think is the definitive reason why Yishmael is not one of the 4 exiles. They are one of the 4 exiles. Which one are they? Persia. Says the Maharal, but there's no connection between the Ishmaelim and the Persians. They're not the same ethnicity, they're not the same culture. Says the Maharal, the 4 exiles are not 4 ethnicities and 4 cultures. They're 4 character traits. And the character trait of the Persians, as described in the Gemara Avodah Zarah, is that they wage wars and they conquer cities. That's what Yishmael does. So incorporated in Persia are the Arabs, Yishmael. According to the Maharal, it gives us a frightening picture of the end of days. Because that means that when the Gemara says that the 2 most important and chashuv nations in world history, which are the 2 nations that will last until the end of days, which the Gemara identifies as Rome and Persia, the Maharal has now changed that to Rome and Yishmael. And that's exactly what we see today. That at the end of days, there are basically only 2 forces that the world has to reckon with. North Korea is just a distraction. At the end of days, there are only 2 powers in the world. There's the Western world, there's America, the heirs of the ancient Roman culture, and there's the Arab world. And the $1 million question is, okay, we know, we see it. These are the last 2 powers standing. But who's going to defeat who? And then it comes out, according to the Maharal, that it's machloikes tanoim. That Rabbi says Yishmael will be the last man standing. And Rabbi Yochanan says Yishmael will be the last man standing. And Rav says no, Rome will defeat Yishmael. And we wish both sides hatzlacha rabbah. But it comes out that it's a machloikes. It's a basic machloikes tanoim where we don't know who will be the last one standing. Could it be then that this machloikes tanoim between Rabbi Yochanan, who say Yishmael, and Rav, who says Rome, is being brought out in a nuance of language in the Medrash Shocher Tov and Rashi? The Medrash Shocher Tov is going like Rav, Yishmael, and then Edom. That's why the Medrash Shocher Tov says Yishmael, Edom, because Rome will defeat Yishmael. And Rashi says, no, not so fast. Rashi says Edom, Yishmael, like Rabbi and like Rabbi Yochanan. So there's really an uncertainty as to who will be the last one standing. And it's a machloikes tanoim, and it might be a machloikes Rashi in the Medrash Shocher Tov. And we really don't have clarity who in fact will be the last one standing. So I'd like to explore this tonight a little bit further. Because I think, according to the Maharal, we see very clearly that if Paras is Yishmael, and the Gemara says the last 2 nations standing will be Rome and Yishmael, so that's what we see today. What the Gemara has predicted 1,500 years ago, we see has come true before our eyes. And the Gemara itself seems to vacillate and back and forth. Who, in fact, will be the last one standing? I saw in the Haggadah of Reb Chaim Kanievsky an incredible thing. You know, Reb Chaim Kanievsky says, it comes out we have really 8 Golosim. How conveniently it plugs right into Chad Gadya. Right? You have the cat and the dog and the stick and the fire and the water and the ox and the shoichet and the Malach HaMaves. The 8 characters in the Chad Gadya correspond to the 8 exiles of the Jewish people. Now, if we could just figure out who the shoichet is and who the Malach HaMaves is, then we could figure out exactly who is Asa, who's Edom, and who's Yishmael, who's the last one standing. So I remember, you know, in the Holocaust, you had Dr. Mengele, what was he called? Angel of Death, huh? Yeah? He was no Yishmaeli. So maybe you could make the case, you know, the shoichet, I could just imagine. So we have 2 positions to fill. We have a shoichet position, and we have a Malach HaMaves position. And we have 2 very capable candidates for both positions. We have Edom and we have Yishmael, and they're both, it's so hard to give out both of these jobs. Who's really more qualified to be a shoichet? Who's more qualified to be a Malach HaMaves? It's really hard to make the call. That's why Rabbi, Rav, and Rabbi Yochanan, it's, you know, who do we give the job to? You know, as Dr. Mengele were the Nazis, the Malach HaMaves, and Yishmael is the shoichet? Incredibly, Reb Chaim Kanievsky in his Haggadah says no. That Rome is the shoichet and Yishmael is the Malach HaMaves. Which means, according to Reb Chaim Kanievsky, Yishmael will be the last one standing. That's a frightening thought. Let's explore this a little further. Please take a look at number 10. There is a concept in Judaism, we know, of course, Ani Mamin Be'emunah Shalema B'vias HaMashiach, but there is a concept that there are 2 Mashiachim. There's something called Mashiach ben Yosef and Mashiach ben David. There is a well-documented concept that there is a Mashiach ben Yosef, Mashiach ben David. The Gemara in Sukkah, Nun Beis and Beis, look at number 10. Vayarini Hashem arba charashim. God showed me the 4 carpenters. Who are the 4 carpenters? Amar Rab Chana bar Bizna, Amar Rab Shimon Chasida, Mashiach ben David, Mashiach ben Yosef. What do I need 2 Mashiachs for? I'll be happy with 1. First, let's deal with 1. I need 2 Mashiachs. What do you need 2 Mashiachs for? Why do you need a Mashiach ben Yosef and Mashiach ben David? Look at number 11. The Medrash defines who these 2 Mashiachim are. The Medrash says, Hashor v'hachamor. The Shor is Mashiach ben Yosef. Yosef is compared to a shor, like the pasuk says, "B'choyer shoyroi hadarloi," and David is compared to a chamor, "Oni v'roichev al chamor." Interesting. Yosef is a shor; he's Mashiach ben Yosef. Mashiach ben David is the chamor. How interesting to compare the 2 Mashiachim to these 2 animals. Comes the Pirkei de Rabbi Elazar, look at number 13. And the Pirkei de Rabbi Elazar says, now if I were to ask you, we don't know which Golus is last. We don't know what comes first, Edom or Yishmael. But if I were to ask you, what comes first, Mashiach ben Yosef or Mashiach ben David? I think everybody, first comes Mashiach ben Yosef, and then comes Mashiach ben David. Look in Pirkei de Rabbi Elazar. Pirkei de Rabbi Elazar says, V'hinei ema chashecha gedoyla noifelas alav. Ema is the 4th Malchus. Chashecha is Yavan. Gedoyla is Paras. Noifeles is Bavel. Olav. Elu b'nei Yishmael sha'aleim ben David yitzmach. King David will sprout forth from which Golus? Yishmael. Why are we connecting David to Yishmael? David's Mashiach. Mashiach is Mashiach. Comes the Zohar HaKadosh in the Raya Mehemna, last week's Parsha, and the Zohar says, Avram Avinu is Midas HaChesed, mid of kindness. Kindness is from what side? The right side. Chesed is from the right side. The right side is which direction? So, If I'm in Mizrach, this is Mizrach, right? Probably. No? Oh, imagine I'm in America and that's Mizrach, right? So if that's the Mizrach for a moment, so then the right side is south. And the left side is north. Listen carefully. The right is Chesed. Chesed comes from the south. Avram Avinu, he's always going south. You notice? Haloich v'nosaya hanegba. Why is the man always going south? And you know when he returns, it doesn't say he goes north. But when he comes, he's going south. Because the midah of Abraham is the right side, the south. Chesed. Chesed is the south. Din is the left side. Din is the north. That's why last week's Haftarah. Where does Bavel come from? Mitzafa and Tipasachara. Babylon comes from the north. Now, if you know anything about geography, is Babylon north of Israel? It's not north of Israel. So what's the Navi talking about? Babylon comes from the north. What in Babylon? What do you say about Eretz Yisrael? Bimarava in the west. That means Babel's in the east. So it should say the evil's coming from the east, not from the north. No. Evil always comes from the north. The north is Midas Hadin. That's Api Machshava. Practically speaking, Rabbi Yaakov Emden writes that it's true Bavel is in the east, but to travel, you can't travel directly from east to west to Eretz Yisrael. There are mountains in the way. The only way to get there is from the north. But conceptually, when we say Bavel is coming to Eretz Yisrael, he's coming from the north. Avram Avinu is on the right side, right? Avram Avinu is Midas HaChesed. Who took Midas HaChesed to the nth degree into absurdity? Into Arayos, Yishmael. Yitzchak is Midas Hadin. Midas Hadin is the left side. Who took Midas Hadin to absurdity? Esav. So Yishmael is on the right side. Esav is on the left side. Says the Zohar HaKadosh, incredible things. We have two Golosim, so we have two Mashiachs. Mashiach ben Yosef is going to take us out of Golos Edom. Mashiach ben David is going to take us out of Golos Yishmael. That's the Zohar HaKadosh. Incredible. Who would have thought such a thing? We always imagine Mashiach ben David is just going to take us to the promised land. No. Mashiach ben Yosef. Now, the Zohar doesn't explain why. Why is it? Now, there is a concept, by the way. There's 70 nations of the world. And if you divide the 70 nations into 35 and 35, the Gra says there's a concept that every time you see the number 70, there are always two heads. So you have a Sanhedrin of 70 with a Nasi and an Av Bezdin. You have 70 names of God, and the two head names are Ani Vahai. You have 70 Jews who came out of Egypt, and Yaakov and Yosef are the heads. Whenever there's a number 70, there are two heads. There's 70 Umayis HaOlam, Esav on one side, Yishmael on the other side. That's why Avram Avinu davened, Lu Yishmael, Yichya Lefanecha Yishmael, and the other 35 guys is Lu, is Lamed Vav. Why do we say that Esav is going, that Mashiach ben David is going to take us out of Golos Yishmael, and Mashiach ben Yosef is going to take us out of Golos Edom? Take a look at number 16. Number 16 is Mamish Dvarim Ayumim. Incredible, incredible words. Remember we said David HaMelech is compared to a chamor. Yosef is compared to a shar. The reason why they're compared to that is they each have a specific task. Mashiach ben Yosef has to take us out of the golos of the shar. Esav Harash is called a shar in Tanakh. He's called Parim Abirim, the mighty cows. On the other hand, what's Yishmael called in Tanakh? Shavu Lachem Pa'im Hachamor. Yishmael is called a donkey. So who's going to take us out of the golos of the donkey? David. Ani v'roichev al chamor. Esav is called a shar. Who's going to take us out of that golos? Mashiach ben Yosef, the Bechar Shoyrei Hadarlai. Says the Vilna Gaon, watch out. Don't you ever plow with an ox and a donkey together. If you plow with an ox and a donkey together, you're bringing together the worst shidduch of all time. You know what the worst shidduch of all time is? A match made in a bad place. You know what that is? Esav and Yishmael. If Esav and Yishmael would ever get together, says the Vilna Gaon, they would destroy the world. That's why in the Chumash, Esav goes to take Machalas Bas Yishmael. Because he knows if he ever connects with Yishmael, if the Shor and the Chamor ever get together, they'll destroy the world. By the way, the Gra says, because Esav and Yishmael are Cain and Hevel. Cain is the murderer, he's Esav. Yishmael is Hevel. That's why the Gra says Yishmael at least did Shuvah because Hevel was a little bit of a better guy than Cain was. But you cannot, we know the Pirkei Rebbe Elazar says, why is there an Isra of Shatnez? Why are you not to wear wool and linen together? Pirkei Rebbe Elazar says, because you can't mix Cain and Hevel. Cain's offering was Mipri Ha'adama, flax, linen. Hevel brought Mibechayrai Sinai, wool. If you mix Cain and Hevel together, that's mixing Esav and Yishmael together, you destroy the world. But so what? I wore a suit, I forgot to check it for Shatnez. Don't forget, you're making a bad shidduch if you don't check your suit for Shatnez. An ox and a donkey. What could be wrong with plowing an ox and a donkey together? It's a bad shidduch. It's a bad shidduch. And these words are especially haunting to me. My grandfather, he should live and be well, he's a survivor of the Holocaust. He wrote in his memoir that when he was in Auschwitz, he saw Eichmann. And Eichmann invited to Auschwitz the Mufti from Jerusalem. And they were sitting arm in arm together in Auschwitz, and they would march Jews in front of them, and they would hit them in a way that they wouldn't be able to have children again. And they were laughing and gloating. And my grandfather writes, when he saw Eichmann and the Mufti together, that was in fulfillment of when the Torah says what happens when Esav and Yishmael come together. You know what happens when Esav and Yishmael come together? Auschwitz happens. They'll destroy the world. The ox and the donkey. And we need two saviors. We have Mashiach ben Yosef and Mashiach ben David. Mashiach ben Yosef takes us out of Galus Edom. Mashiach ben David takes us out of Galus Yishmael. So I ask you, what does that tell us about who will be the last one standing? If Mashiach ben Yosef takes us out of Galus Edom, and Mashiach ben David takes us out of Galus Yishmael, which will be the last Galus? Clearly, according to this opinion of the Vilna Gaon, first comes Galus Edom, and then comes Galus Yishmael. First comes Mashiach ben Yosef out of Galus Edom, and we hope very quickly after that, Mashiach ben David takes us out of Galus Yishmael. We're dealing with Yishmael today. We see him rearing his ugly head. Maybe we hope Galus Edom has come to some type of end. We're not suffering from it as much as we did. Let's talk a little bit about the personality and the character of Yishmael. Two astounding things. The Kli Yakar says, so this lady Rivka, you heard of her? Yitzchak's wife. She's expecting, and she doesn't know what's going on. She's having a kid. He's schizophrenic. They pass by the shul, and he's kicking to come out. Pass by a Beis Avodah Zarah, he's kicking to come out. And Yitzchak says, oh my goodness. That's what happens when you marry, you get someone with a shver like you have, like Besuel. I can't believe I married into this family. You see, I have righteous parents, so for having two kids, probably one of them is from me, who's going to be righteous, and the other one's from your side of the family. Like, whenever the kids misbehave, you tell your wife, that's that's from your side of the family, So that's what Yitzchak tells Rivka. We have two. We have one tzaddik, that's from me, and the chalaria, that's from your side of the family. So Rivka goes to be doiresh from the Navi, and the Navi says, don't worry! You're having a Yaakov and an Esav. You're having the Gadol Hadar, and you're having a mass murderer. Baruch Hashem, everything is going to be okay. How exactly did the Navi assuage Rivka's worry? Rivka's worried she's going to have a chalaria. So what does the Navi say? You're going to have the worst kid of all time? Listen to a Kli Yakar. Rivka was worried she's going to have a chalaria like Yishmael. You know what kind of chalaria Yishmael is? Name for me right now, I'll give you 10 minutes. All of you write down on a piece of paper all the big tzaddikim that ever came out of Yishmael. Think of it. You need paper, a pen? Write down for me all the big good Gerim that came out of Yishmael. All the Tanoim, Amoraim, Tzadikim, Litfax, Hasidish, whoever you want. Who came out of Yishmael? Tell me, list for me all the great Gerim that came out of Yishmael. Now let's do Esav. Remember, there was somebody by the name of Nero Kezar. Nero Kezar is about to destroy Yerushalayim, and he meets the kid. The kid says, you'll destroy it, and then God will destroy you. He said, what? He ran away. Who came from him? Reb Meir. And then who else came from Esav? Maybe Rabbi Kiva. Who else came from Esav? Shmaya Vavtalyon. Who else came from Esav? Onkelos Hager. And even Antoninus. Without Antoninus, we wouldn't have a Mishnah. A lot of good Gerim came from Esav. And who came from Yishmael? I'll get back to you on that one. Nobody ever came from Yishmael. So the Navi tells Rivka, don't worry. You think you're like Hagar? Hagar, there's nothing good ever came out of that lady. Nothing ever came out of her. You don't worry. You're going to have a Yaakov, and you're going to have an Esav, you're going to have Rameir. Rameir says, even if you have an Esav, the Gemara says about Esav, he's Yisrael Mumar, comes Rameir, he says, don't worry. Ben kachu, ben kach, kruyim banim, you're all good at the end of the day. Says the Maral, let's explain why it is. Why it is that so many nice Gerim came out of Esav and nothing ever came out of Yishmael. Says Maral, an incredible thing. Look at the way the Bnei Esav dress and the way the Bnei Yisrael dress. The Bnei Esav, so you go to America. So first of all, he has an Edom, he has a son-in-law who's a Yid. But even if he's not a Yid, he wears a nice suit, he wears a nice tie, he dresses well. You know, the Bnei Esav, the Bnei Edom, they dress well. The Bnei Yishmael, you know, they get the Shmata store, and you know, they put a few rags together, and they don't even wear Big Day Adam. Look at the homes they live in. Look at the homes the Bnei Esav live in. Bnei Esav live in respectable homes. Bnei Yishmael don't. Says the Maral Chidush, even though there are 5 levels of matter, there's doimim, inanimate objects, there's tzoimeach, objects that grow, there's chai, living beings, there's medaber, there's speaking beings, and there's Yisrael. The difference between a rock and a plant is the difference between Adam and Yisrael. But not all Bnei Adam are the same. The Bnei Yishmael, says Maral, are not on the same level of Adam as the rest of mankind. They don't have the same nefesh ha'adam as the rest of mankind. That is indicative, and that is reflected in the fact they don't wear regular Big Day Adam, they don't live in regular Batei Adam. So if you want to know why the Gerim never came out of Yishmael, you need to be a Ben Adam to then elevate yourself to Yisrael. But from a Yishmaeli to a ger, you could become a ger, but to become a ger tzaddik, like the likes that came out of Esav, again, these are not my words. How could I even have come to say something? I'm reading to you the Gur Aryeh. It's Maral, word for word. We all know, we're all familiar with the comments of Rabbi Shua Leib Diskin. B'chol ha'Torah kula, noun, adjective. Adam, gadol. Adam, chashav. Bayis, gadol. Bayis, katan. First comes the noun, then comes the adjective. Where's the exception? Yishmael. V'huyeh, pera, Adam. Chalaria, man. First the adjective and then the noun. Why? Because it's not. The noun is chalaria. What is he? The noun is a chalaria. What kind of chalaria? An Adam kind. It should say Adam pera. Why does it say pera Adam? It's the only exception in Kol HaTorah Kula. First comes the noun, then comes the description. The noun is a pera. The description is an Adam. The Zohar HaKadosh says the most frightening of all the Galasim is Galus Yishmael. The Lashon Hazar is number 19 at the end. Ve'ein lecha galus kasha liyisrael kamay galus Yishmael. But according to what we're saying then, if you see the Bnei Yishmael in the end of days, then you know the end of days are really close. Because if what we're saying is correct, based on the Maral, that the last two nations that will stay until the end of time are Persia and Rome, and Persia is Yishmael, and we see Yishmael, and according to many and most sources, Yishmael is the last one standing as a mighty empire, then we know how close the end is. Take a look at number 24. I believe the Baal HaTurim learns this way as well. Number 24. You know the end of Chayei Sarah, the beginning of Toldos? How does Chayei Sarah end? Al pnei kol echav nofal. Yishmael will fall. How does Toldos begin? V'yele Toldos Yitzchak. Says the Baal HaTurim, that's right. Look at number 24. Kishayipol Yishmael bi'achris hayomim az Yitzmach ben David. When Yishmael falls, that's when Ben David comes. Where do you see in the words Ve'ela Toldos Yitzchak any reference to Mashiach ben David? Ready for this? Yitzchak is a reference to Eliyahu Hanavi. What? Yeah, very simple. What's the numerical value of Yitzchak? 208. Pinchas, 208. Whenever Pinchas needs to do something, he always girds himself in the strength of Yitzchak. For example, you want to hear an amazing thing? Pinchas in last week's Parsha. So if you're a Pinchas, you're a 208 man. Pinchas, Vayar Pinchas. What did Pinchas see? The Zayar says. Pinchas saw that when Zimri was living with Cosby, he saw a letter in the Aleph Beis, which is the most dangerous letter. Earlier today we spoke about the good letter, the letter Tes. What's the most dangerous letter? The letter Mem. The letter Mem was the death of the Eitz Hadas. That's why when Adam Rishon took from the Eitz Hadas, it says, Vatikach mi period. He took the Mem and he adjoined it to Vatikach, to the Vav Taf. It says Vatera, Vatikach, Vatipakachna, Vav Taf, Vav Taf, Vav Taf. When you see a Mem and it joins to a Vav Taf, what do you get? That's Maves. The floating Mem is the most dangerous thing in the world. You know, if you see floaters, you need to tell your doctor immediately. A Mem is a very dangerous letter. A Mem is Misa. So listen to what happened. When Cosby lived with Zimri, Vayar Pinchas, the Zohar says, what did Pinchas see? He saw the letter Mem. Now when there's a letter Mem, that's going to bring major Misa la'olam. So you know what he did? If you're 208, and you take a Mem and you put it with you, it becomes Vayikach Roimach Biyada. He took the spear. The Reish Ches 208, he took the Mem and he used the Mem to be able to kill Cosby and Zimri and to put away the Magefa. But Pinchas is 208. So when the Baal HaTurim says, when Yitzchak falls, when Yishmael falls, Ben David will sprout forth. Where do you see anything about Ben David? The Eile Toldos Yitzchak. Yitzchak is a reference to Eliyahu Hanavi, and who comes with Eliyahu Hanavi? Eliyahu Tishbi, Eliyahu Agiladi, Vimhero Yav Elenu Im Shiach ben David. Al pnei kol echav nafal, v'yele Toldos Yitzchak. So we have good news. Good news is, as soon as Yishmael starts making a lot of noise, you know the end is coming. So all the Tanoim are on the Har HaBayis. They're all on the Temple Mount. And they see a terrible scene. They see in the holiest spot on earth a despicable, lowly animal prancing around. They see Shualim Hilchubai. And what do? They cry. In a place where even a non-Kayin cannot go, V'hazar Abba Yamos. And the Tanoim start to cry. And what's Rabbi Akiva doing? Rabbi Akiva's laughing. Rabbi Akiva's laughing. What's Rabbi Akiva laughing at? What's he so happy about? To see a fox on the Temple Mount? So there's a Perush on Tehillim from Rabbi Binyamin Vitali. Rabbi Binyamin Vitali says an incredible thing, that the letters Shu'alim, if you unscramble them, you get Yishmael. Then when you hear that the Yishmaelim are dancing and prancing on the Temple Mount, claiming it's theirs, guess what that means? as soon as they're trying to claim it's our turn for Melucha, we're the final Galus, we're here to stay, Rabbi Akiva is laughing. Because Rabbi Akiva knows that as soon as Yishmael begins to assert themselves in the end of days, that's when Pnei Kol Echav Nafal, that's when they're going to have their downfall, and will be Zoicha to Ve'ela Toldois Yitzchak. So let's hope that Yishmael has reached as high as it's going to go. Let's hope that we're Zoicha to the Geulais from all the Golosim for Klal Yisrael. And Be'ezus Hashem Yisbarach, we hope that the tainus of Tisha B'Av Haba'aleinu L'Toiva should turn to Klal Yisrael. Tzoim HaChamishi Yiyah L'Beis Yehuda L'Sasoin L'Simcha L'Mayadim Toivim V'Ha'emes V'Ha'Shalom Ehavu. Thank you everyone for listening. Wish everyone a wonderful evening. Shkoyach.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.